So being a solopreneur or starting a side hustle is extremely exciting, but can also be extremely overwhelming because you have a staff of one. And I can speak to this personally because in starting my business, I went from running a team of marketers of about 10 to just myself. And man, does it change when you have a team to delegate to versus you're the only one taking action. And so you think when you start your business that you can do everything. It's all right, I'm going to be cheap and cheery and scrappy and I can do it all. But you quickly realize that that's a recipe for extreme overwhelm and burnout. And we can't do it all alone. So we're going to talk today about ways that you don't have to go it alone.
Welcome to Diary of a Worthy Pursuit, how to get what you truly want in life and business.
And like I mentioned, today we're going to talk about how to delegate without a team. This is so important for all of us who are just starting out our businesses or maybe thinking about it and wondering, how are we going to get all the things done that's required? I mean, you wrote a book about all the things to do when you start a business, right? So what did this look like for you when you've started your various businesses?
So I started my first business in 2006. And I remember I took classes ahead of time, like the Small Business Development Center and SCORE and there's just tons of places around town that offer these little classes on learning stuff, taxes and whatever. So I tried to learn the things that I thought I needed to know, but I didn't realize, of course, what I didn't know that I didn't know, and so I didn't take any classes on those. And so you start your business, right? You hang your shingle out. I'm really good at doing this job, whatever it is. And you start doing that, and then there was things like accounting that I took a little class on QuickBooks, but I didn't learn things like what does net 30 mean or net 60 or whatever. I didn't learn that sometimes customers don't pay. Going in deeper, I didn't learn that potential employees sometimes don't show up to interviews. I didn't learn all these things, even the whole mileage deduction thing for taxes.
Yeah.
I didn't learn the correct way to do that. It was probably 5 years after I started my business, which cost me way more in taxes previously. I remember meeting with an accountant and they told me, these are your options, whatever. And I'm like, wait, I can deduct that? It's one of those, like, how come nobody told me? But
you're preaching to the choir right now because I'm working on finalizing my taxes and looking at this exact thing. But the thing is, how much time have I put into trying to figure that out, right? When I know it's not my strong suit. I love what I do. I love coaching. I love helping people become a better version of themselves. And not that I'm so glad that taxes and those laws are someone else's strength, but I know it's not mine. But yet we try to, when we're a staff of one, figure out how to do it ourselves because we think we're going to save money. When you've mentioned this before, our money or our time is money. And so
absolutely.
It is
more valuable.
Right. So what am I trading? What can I not do? What's the opportunity cost of me doing my taxes and taking 5 times as long than sending it to someone who knows how? And I can use that time to do something that will actually move my business forward.
Yeah. And just knowing what to look for.
Right.
I tried to sit down once to do my taxes when I had my own business. The 1040EZ, that was easy, right?
Oh,
when
sure.
you have 1 W-2, no big thing. Even 3 W-2s, not a big deal. But I remember sitting down like, how hard can this be? And you fill out one blank and you're like, no. No. Because aside from that form, there's going to be other things and other forms that you just don't know.
Right.
I think, what is the tax code? It's so long that if one person were to sit down and read it, it would take 90 years or something like that.
Oh my God.
Like it's just impossible for any one person.
That's so daunting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So now we expect one person, right, our accountant, to know. And even before that, we expect us to just be like, yeah, I got to go pay my taxes, whatever. But no one can even possibly humanly know all the rules. And that's just one facet.
Right.
Then we talk marketing and all this other stuff, like,
payroll, insurance, HR, all these different aspects of our businesses.
Yeah.
So we have some steps for you today to talk about how you can delegate without a team. So our first step is to cut the to-do list. We talked about this here before, but we end up having 20 to 30 things on this to-do list, and it's really important, I think, to realize that maybe some of that stuff doesn't need to be there at all. We need to use and leverage what's going to be the best use of our time. But also, if we have that long of a list, does all of it need to be done by us?
Right.
And when you have a team, it's a lot easier to say, nope, I don't need to do that. I can delegate that. That can go to this team member. That can go to this team member, right? So much easier. But when it's you, it's a lot harder. So we first say cut the to-do list, because it's a lot easier to try to find solutions for something, 5 things than 30 things.
Right. And the 30 things on your to-do list, there's no way you can
No, you'll never get through those. And it's always so overwhelming. I preach on this all the time, but it's so overwhelming to look at a to-do list of 30 things. If you get 3 things done, you still feel, oh, I didn't make any progress today.
Right. Have you ever written something down on your list that you already did just to cross it out?
Yes, absolutely.
Check
the box.
Yeah, right. 31. Here we go.
Right, exactly.
That's funny. The interesting thing that I have found is, I'll give you a really quick example. I was part of a B&I networking thing, right? Which is fine, great, wonderful, doing all right. But I figured I was doing well with that, so I should have an employee go to another one. But then I realized how much it was costing to pay that employee. Hourly, mileage, the expense of the B&I, and then the employee wasn't necessarily as invested as I was in the success, so then they weren't as successful. And I thought, wait a second, how much am I making off of that employee going there? And then I backed up another step and said, wait a second, how much am I making by going there? You're devoting whatever 3 or 4 hours, sometimes 5, 6 hours a week to that.
Yeah.
So you're talking that's 10 to 20% of your work week in this one thing. Is that justified? So I'm like, okay, clear that off the list.
Right. But what you're saying is absolutely valuable for folks to hear, is that you should look at your to-do list and say, what is actually moving the needle forward? And as we start our businesses, revenue is our main goal, right? We got to stay alive and afloat. So even looking at your to-do list and saying, what is going to drive revenue forward, and then prioritizing those things is important, right? Like, my taxes are extremely important.
Yeah, you don't get a choice there.
But I'm not driving a ton of revenue by that, unless I, did a really good job of saving and paying and all the things. But,
yeah, right.
So I think it's important that when you look at that to-do list, you're prioritizing it based on your highest leverage work that's going to make the biggest impact for your business.
Right. True story, yeah. I feel like there's common where we'll come up with actions and it doesn't necessarily accomplish anything. So at the end of the day, we can say, like, I'm so busy, or I was so busy, but I don't know if I actually accomplished anything that moved the needle.
Yeah, we're not getting the right things done. So the way that I teach this to my focus clients is say, at the beginning of every week, you do a weekly preview and you look at your quarterly goals and you make sure that you set 3 important things to get done this week that'll move at least one of those goals forward. And then when I look at each day and determine what I'm going to do today, I pick out 3 things based on what I want to get done this week. So I'm always making sure that my biggest goals, I'm at least taking the next little step and the next little step forward. So 1, it helps me understand that I'm moving things, but 2, it makes me make sure I'm getting the right things done to make progress and not get stuck in busy work.
Gotcha, interesting. So with your clients, have you found that they follow that?
It's a shift for people. I think the biggest part that's a struggle for them is cutting it down to 3. They're like, oh, I need to get more than 3 things done today. I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Right.
But all of us do. But if today was over and you only got 3 things done, what's going to make you feel good about the day? And that's how you set those priorities. And so when we're cutting our list, those 3 things should be the things that are moving us toward our highest leverage work and goals.
All right. I like that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so you're putting them in the future, magic wand, right? If you had accomplished these 3 things and these 3 things only, how would you feel?
Right.
In the end, you'd be like, pretty good.
Yeah, right? And that doesn't mean that you get, if you get those 3 things done and you have 2 hours left in the day, great. Go do all the other things that are the little things that you have to get done, right? Like, we have to unload the dishwasher at home, or we have to walk the dog, right? Those sorts of things still happen, but they're not the high leverage work that are going to move you toward your goals.
Yeah, interesting. I like it.
Yeah.
What do we have next here? Systematized by leveraging technology. What? We're in a day and age where it's cool. Can do a lot of things.
Oh my gosh, there's been so much talk of leveraging AI these days. It is very trendy. But at its core, this idea is that we can we don't have to outsource to a person. We can outsource to technology. So one of the ways that I've used this, and this is the big thing in marketing right now, so if you're not in marketing, maybe you haven't heard this, but there's a tool called ChatGPT, Copy AI. It's this whole idea of writing some of your content by just putting in a few inputs and then having the machine try to output something, and then you can edit it or give it feedback. But this is one way that I have started creating some of my content, some of my blogs, because it just speeds up the process. And I find that I am a better editor than creator.
Oh, absolutely. It's much easier to fix something.
Yeah, if I sit down and look at a blank page, it'll take me an hour to fill it. But if someone gives me something, then I can edit it. So I really like this tool because it gets my brain working. And I can say, well, this doesn't look right, I'll change this. Or this isn't my tone of voice, I'll go through and change the voice. But that has really helped me in my business. And it was one of the hurdles that I felt like content moves me forward because it helps people trust me and people do business. Right. And people do business with, people that they know, like, and trust. So this is important leverage, but I was never getting to it because it was just dreading it.
It's on the back burner.
Right. But this is a tool that has helped me move that forward.
Yeah, I like that.
How about you?
It's interesting because I have some employees, so with the call answering service, there's times that are busy and there's times that are less than busy. Right, sunny day, people are calling all the time because they see their lawn and all that jazz. Snowy, wintry day, people are hibernating, phone's not ringing. So I'm like, hey, for these clients, including our website, I want you guys to write blogs in your downtime. One, because it is content, so that's good. And two, because I don't want them getting used to being bored.
Yeah.
So I had this, one of their employees is a writer.
Okay.
And I'm always bugging her to actually publish her book. But anyways, she's like, I didn't get to the blogs this week. And I'm like, no worries. Just use this software, AI software, to write it. This is how you do it, keywords and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'll look into that. And then she circled back and said, I don't feel like that's right because it's not the human voice and all this kind of stuff. And I said, interesting thing though, the human didn't get it done. So the software will do it good enough.
Right.
Versus your perfect, but not even started.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another piece of this, right? So you have 20 things on your to-do list and you're not moving them forward. Which one can the software at least get halfway there?
Right.
Then you're 50% closer than you were before you started it. Yeah. Some of the other things that I've heard people do, I mean, you guys are certainly outsourcing to a partner, answering the phone. That's a great outsource. Other technology, though, that I've seen people use is their marketing. So rather than having to take a phone call and do a discovery call or do some kind of estimate, if I'm a roofing company, I could have an estimator right on my website and talk about, like, this is the kind of shingles I want, this is about the square footage, blah, 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 and I could get a rough estimate, right? We could create software to do that, so you could save someone's time of having to go out to every house and create that. Another one that I've seen a lot of coaches do is they use a webinar as a sales tool, and then they don't have to talk to every prospect. Not that they don't want to, but it's a better way to leverage their time. So they use the webinar, they market and push everything in their funnel toward that webinar, and then when folks see that, then they can either sign up or they can contact you with more questions, but it cuts down on the amount of discovery calls, prospect calls that they need to take, and it frees up that time to do other things.
I remember the first couple webinars that I was going to when I got into the coaching game, and I realized after the fact, like, that wasn't live at all. It seemed like it was, and they had questions and all this kind of stuff, but I went back to the recording, and I'm like, those weren't even real people asking questions. They made it look like that so that it looked real.
But isn't that amazing that technology can do that for you?
I felt betrayed. I felt like I got duped.
Well, maybe it's not worth them making it feel like it's live.
But they had, there were hundreds of people in that thing, and I'm sure their funnel, their game is get hundreds of people signed up, whatever, free webinar.
Yeah.
And then get dozens of people to go to the next step. Right. And out of those dozens, you'll get a handful that actually pay the $5,000. And once they had that webinar, the whole funnel set up, it was automatic.
Right.
Money just came in the bank.
Well, and then one of the things that can be the most time consuming of trying to develop new leads and get new opportunities into your funnel is just taken care of. What could you do with that time if that didn't soak it up? Let's say you spend 70% of your time trying to get new revenue in the door. That's really useful and a great way to grow. Other systems that I've seen people use and leverage include things just like using your email rules. We've talked about inbox zero in the past, but using email rules to make sure that you're not spending a ton of time, checking email. If you get a bunch of speaking requests, are there ways that you can create some templates so you can respond to those kinds of things? So thinking through in advance, what do you spend most of your time on, and how can you try to automate and leverage that?
Yeah, I love it. It's interesting, even with the other podcasts that I have, I get reached out to by a lot of people that want to be guests. And it's still somewhat of it's totally a manual process for me to go through them. And I keep thinking, I need to create rules and have someone else make the yes or no on these. Because right now I'm looking and you dig up and you're like, not so much. Or, hey, this is super awesome, incredible. I'm like, I feel like I need that just written down and then delegated. Because even though it's not a lot of time, when you look at those little tasks, they add up.
Right.
And soon you're spending 2 hours on just I said no to some people for guests, and I said yes some people for guests. But I never had that on my to-do list. It was just this email came, so therefore I got to react to it. So it was a weird they're kind of stealing time. I mean, that's the business, but it's one of those I'm letting them.
So that's your challenge. How can you systemize that? Leverage some technology on that. Well, I think going hand in hand with that is this idea that we can enlist support. So after you try to look for all your technology solutions, what other support can you find?
Right.
And this doesn't have to be employees. Especially when you're starting out your business, it's really scary to hire a full-time employee.
Oh my gosh.
Especially your very first one.
Scary,
right?
Expensive, annoying, yeah.
Yeah, well, and there's so much on the line too. There's that weight of what if we don't make enough money that I can't pay their salary, and all of those sorts of things. So, but there's other ways to enlist support, and your business is one of those.
Yeah. People outsource calls to us. They do outsource some administrative stuff to us. We have a lot of clients that have us take care of their main email inbox. So I'm like, I got to use that.
Yeah, right.
Got to use my own service kind of thing. So it's, interesting, the scheduling and all that jazz.
Yeah.
We have a lot of clients where we're taking inbound calls, scheduling, and the client, looks at their phone in the morning, goes, does what they're good at, and then hangs it up at night.
Yeah.
Until the next day, same thing.
Well, and one less thing for them to worry about, right? If I went into the business to be an arborist and I really like caring for trees, I don't want to take all these phone calls.
Right.
So seeing my schedule full today is probably the most exciting thing in the world. I get to go do what I love, which is taking care of trees, not, taking
super easy,
client calls.
They don't have to deal with the angry clients, the upset clients, even the clients that just don't even know what they want. Don't have to deal with any of that. Just show up, bring your ladder. Saw, whatever.
Right. Or whatever it is that you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
Another way to leverage this, especially in the past 5, maybe 10 years, is the gig economy.
Oh my gosh.
And this really existed before we called it the gig economy, right? You hire a tax consultant or you hire a CPA to do your taxes for you. But this has been so interesting. For me, I just recently hired a virtual assistant. I only pay her by the hour.
Nice.
And she's taking content that I've already created, chopping it up into social media posts and putting it out there.
All right.
Because I like creating big content. I don't like scheduling it, and I'm a perfectionist, so I take too much time
for
to
that
do
little
that.
post that's
for
going
that
to be
one
seen
little
for 3
post.
seconds.
Right. So it's not my highest leverage work. So I have hired someone, and I hire her specifically for this gig of creating my social media content. She takes however many hours it is. I only pay her for those hours used. And now that task is off my list. And I don't have this feeling of I have to make sure I have enough work for her or whatever. I know exactly what she does. I only pay her for the time that she uses.
Yeah.
And it's this huge weight off my shoulders of thank God I don't have to figure out what I'm posting today.
Right. So it's a to-do list essentially for her.
Right.
So you created that list and it'll get done because that's what you're paying her for. Or you can figure it's going to get done.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
So what are some other ways that you've enlisted support or outsourced things in your business?
Software has been a huge one, but finding software has been a challenge. I think it's a challenge for everyone. Because if you get bigger software, you go through a salesperson, who I assume is real when you chat with them, right? And they make the promises, and then you get the software and you find out, okay, it's 75% of that, which is fine to a point unless you figure out you need that 25%.
Right.
But it's software, just the things that you can save or the things that you can automate. even just calendar stuff. I remember we had a client. She didn't understand Google Calendar.
Okay.
So I was at her office, and we had created a Google Calendar for her, because otherwise it was woodworking flooring.
Oh.
It was all up here.
Oh, wow.
Schedule was all up here. And I'm like, what happens if you get in a car accident? Right?
Yeah.
She said, employees, successful business, doing very well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you're going to have a bad day, right? They're going to have a bad day because they won't know where to go. Because she's like, every morning I tell them where they have to go and what they have to bring. But it was all up here. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. Because we can't take a call and then tell you and then expect you to remember.
Right.
And she's like, why not? And I'm like, nope. Because I didn't want us to get blamed for making a mistake where it was just her.
Valid point.
So anyways, we set up this Google Calendar. Great. And she's like, how does this work? And I'm in front of her computer, and I call up us, right, the company. And I'm like, hey, just make a test appointment. And they do, and lo and behold, it just pops up on her screen. And she was like, what did you do? How did you get in the computer? And I'm like, no, it's easy, right? And so I open up that same appointment, and I change it to like test number 2 or something like that. And I'm like, what do you see, right? She's like, I see test number 2. And the woman was like, what in the world? Like I just showed her a flying car or something like that, or fire for the first time. I'm like, no, you can do this too. So now we'll put our appointments on there. If you get an appointment, you can put it on there. We'll be able to see.
Right.
She's like, how come nobody ever told me about this?
Well, but game changing
Oh my gosh.
for her, right?
Yeah.
And that's a simple example. I mean, for her, it was completely game changing, right?
Right.
But that's just Google Calendar. Think of all the other things that we do. So one of the things that I like to look at when I'm trying to help clients work through what's worth your time versus what are you going to try to find something else for, tech or outsource in some way, is thinking about how you align with your passion and your proficiency, right? So if you think about it as like a matrix,
Yeah.
the things that you are really passionate about, but you're not very proficient in, those are, that's your discomfort zone. Those are things that you want to get better at. Maybe you want to spend a little time. Like for me, that would probably be writing. I really want to write more. I don't think I'm extremely proficient. I will tell myself that. I need to positive self-talk it, right? But I need more practice.
Okay.
So that's something where I might set aside time to get better there. But things that I have low passion for and low proficiency, that's my drudgery zone. That's like taxes for me, right? Like I don't want to understand the tax law. It's going to take me 5 hours to do this. And so that's prime area for, if that stuff really needs to get done, that should be outsourced.
So you're not passionate about taxes?
I'm not passionate. I mean, if I was going to get a huge refund, great. But that's usually not how being an entrepreneur goes. So that's my drudgery zone, right? So then you have the other two ends, which are things that I am not passionate about, but I'm proficient in. That's more of your disinterest zone. Right? So those are the things where someone's like, hey, I need this thing done. I know you can do it really quickly. And you're like, fine. But you do it because you can do it in 10 minutes and it would take them, 2 hours.
So you're good at it, but you don't like doing it.
Right. Yeah, so that's your disinterest zone. And then the highest leverage point is where you are proficient and you're passionate. And that is this area that we call the desire zone. So that's where you want to try to spend most of your time. But, as you're starting a business, there's a lot of things that you need to get done that you aren't extremely passionate about, right? Like payroll maybe you still need to pay your bills. You still need to make sure that, if you don't like prospecting or you don't like sales, that stuff still needs to get done. But the more that you can try to move toward your desire zone, the happier you're going to be in work. And then everything that kind of falls out of your desire zone is a good opportunity or a candidate for trying to find support.
Right? I love it. That's cool. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Stuff's just got to get done. You can figure out what you're good at and what you enjoy. Do you find that, let's just say purpose, or I'm sorry, passion, word passion. When you have that passion for some things, you're just like, yay, I like to go to movies or whatever. Or I'm good at this thing. But there's some things that you realize how valuable that is to actually get done. Do you find that you can consciously move your passion up for something?
Oh, I think that's it's a trying question. So when you know the benefit, I think sometimes you just push your way through, not because you really enjoy it.
All right.
At least it's that way for me. I think that over time, if you see the fruit of that labor,
Yeah.
it's easier to get passionate about it because you see it growing your business.
All right.
Right,
Because
so
you
for-
know, okay, so like weeding your garden or something like that.
Right. You
Tough
don't
to be
love
passionate
doing
about
that. Right. But
But
it
you
is
love enjoying your garden.
right. You love the food that comes out
So
of
in
it.
order for that to happen, you
Yes.
gotta weed it.
Right.
So you find joy or figure out a way to find joy or make it as enjoyable as possible.
I mean, it's like brushing my teeth. I
Okay.
don't love brushing my teeth.
I don't know anybody
but-
that really does.
But
Today's
it's something,
the day.
but it's something that you have to do, right, for your general health. So
Right.
it's just, I think it fits in that realm. So for me, what falls in my desire zone is actually being on coaching calls with clients. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
helping people move forward. I love helping them try to uncover things that maybe they wouldn't have uncovered by themselves. But that's not always the thing that I can spend most of my time doing. So I have to set up my sales calls. I have to do some of these other things that take more time, but I'm doing it all so I can do the work that I love.
Interesting. Okay. I like that. I get that with the coaching stuff. I love meeting with clients.
Yes.
The hardest part I had was that email that I would send afterwards that summarized what we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Just in the back of my head, I was like, who's going to read this, right? Even though I'm summarizing all the things, give them the action steps and all that jazz from the notes that I took. That was painful for me to just have to force myself. And it was not something that I could delegate
Right.
because my notes were so messy that I think only I could really understand them. So it's interesting how I would have to just force myself or try to find some reward. Like if you do this, James,
right.
we'll get you an ice cream cone after you do your job.
So, though, now there's technology that could do some of that for you, right? So you could have recorded your meeting, sent it off to like Otter AI or some other transcription service, which could have written out all of your notes, and then you could have given it to a virtual assistant or something to be
Sure.
like, summarize what we talked about and write out next steps. So it would still take some time.
Yeah.
But again, I think that that's your, what am I looking for? That's your, not your discomfort, but your, I'm missing my word. It's the zone where you're proficient. You can do it in 10 minutes. It's going to take someone else 2 hours to do it. So what's the value of your time?
I would hate it for that first hour though, where I delayed it, and then
Yeah.
the 10 minutes of actually doing it. That hour of just like, maybe I'll just sort out some stuff here before I actually send that email. Yeah, it was tough.
So our last piece of advice here is just say no. There are certain things that we leave on our list or think we have to do that really aren't valuable, that really aren't moving us forward, that we've talked about. So this idea that it's okay to say no, sometimes really hard for people because we're built-in people pleasers. So I heard this great advice about, you've probably heard if you're a manager, you give a feedback sandwich. You tell them
Yeah,
something good they're
that's what I've
doing, you
heard, yeah.
criticize them, and then you follow it up with something good. So they hear it, but they don't leave with just the negative thing. So I read something recently that said that saying no is a positive thing if you do it the right way. You can say, if I ask to be a guest on your show and you just think, that's really not a good fit for me, you could say something like, hey, I checked out your website and I really love what you guys are doing. It seems like you're really making a difference for blah, blah, blah. But then you say your no. And you say it very clearly. It's not a maybe, don't come back later and I will change my mind. It's we don't have room for this at this time, or this kind of content, while valuable, doesn't serve our audience. But please, keep up the good work, or if I see anyone who might benefit from your service, I'll make sure to pass them your way.
Oh my gosh, you are so much nicer than I am. So I'm just like, nope. Email done.
Well, that's fair. But then there's other things in life where, someone asks you to be on a committee, or, hey, can you tackle this project for me, right? The things that are in your drudgery zone you're good at, but you're not passionate for. It's like, how can you say no to those things so they don't zap your time and energy for the stuff you care about?
Right.
And this tool is extremely useful in that. Like, hey, I respect that the PTO does really cool things for our school, but my schedule doesn't allow that based on other commitments I've made for me and my family. I will make a donation.
Well, there you go.
Or whatever it
There
is.
you go, right?
Yeah.
It's
How have you
interesting.
said no?
One of the things that I found with saying no, I learned probably the first year and a half into my business. I was originally filing this is a print repair company. So I would file the invoice stapled with the test pages.
Okay.
And then I would file those by customer. So every time some new customer came along, I had a whole new file folder for these test pages and all that kind of stuff. As you can imagine, that became a very large pile on my desk and on the floor. And my wife comes in, this is when I was working from home, and she's like, well, what is all this? I'll just help you clean it up. What do you need me to do? And I told her the system. This is a system, right? You get this invoice, new client, folder, in the filing cabinet they go. And then she starts doing that, and she's like, do you ever look at this stuff? I'm like, no, but it's early. The goal is if a customer reaches out, they can say, hey, I got stripes on my page or something like that. We're missing print, whatever. I can go back to their little folder. I can open up and see what the problem was before. I can see the test pages and like, oh, I'm set to go to fix this thing. And then she countered with, have you ever done that? And I thought about it and I was like, once. And she's like, you want me to file hundreds for the one time that you might look at this? And I'm like, yeah. And then she said, she's like, do we have to file them by client? What if we just put all of September in a September folder? So you know that client's somewhere in September because you can look in your computer, figure out what month. So instead of having an individual folder taking up all the space, because that client may call you one time,
Right.
you fix your machine, they don't call you again for 7 years. I'm like, oh, that'll work. Because in that one time that I do have to look it up, I could just look in that month and then go through that small pile.
But she challenged you.
She did.
Yeah.
It was totally cool. And it was one of those things like, we've always done it this way.
Uh-huh.
Which is the worst argument in the world.
Right, it is.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't justify anything.
Right.
So anyways, we did it her way, and then eventually I just stopped doing it altogether.
That's great, though. And now that's something that you don't put your energy into.
Right. So I would have been like, file stuff on my to-do list. And it would have been like, yes, I accomplished that. But what did that move towards the goal?
Right.
Of being a successful business owner. So it was interesting having an outsider coming to look in, thinking like, dude, no.
And that's what we need sometimes. We need
Absolutely.
an outside perspective to help us through it. So,
Yeah.
all right, today we've talked about how you can delegate without a team,
So thank you for watching Diary of a Worthy Pursuit.
where we help you get what you truly want in life and business.